What would you do if a medium foretold that you and your family were cursed and would die prematurely? Well, for Sarah Winchester, the answer to that question was to build a home like no other, to appease the angry, vengeful spirits of the thousands that had died by the Winchester Rifle. When Sarah lost her husband William to tuberculosis in 1881, she received a lot of money and power upon inheriting 50% of the Winchester Repeating Arms Company, famous at the time for manufacturing the gun that won the West. Sarah was a remarkable woman who not only took on the responsibility of her husband's legacy, but battled to keep her family and herself safe in the most beautiful and creative way. No amount of money can replace a loved one, and sadly, this was not the end of the heartache that Sarah would face, as she also lost her young daughter to a childhood illness named marasmus, which has the poor patient wasting away to death. It's reported that Sarah was completely destroyed with grief. Seeking out guidance, she went to visit with a medium named Adam Coons. He channeled her late husband, and it is said he had lots to say to her. His advice was to leave the family home in New Haven and travel west, with the help of her husband's spirit guiding her. Here, she must continuously build a home for herself and the spirits of the people who had fallen victim to the Winchester Rifles, to prevent herself from having a premature death. So Sarah did just that. She left Connecticut and moved to San Jose, California in 1884 and found an 8-room farmhouse that was unfinished, owned by a Dr. Caldwell. Some say that maybe the move was due to needing a change in scenery after all the hurt that she'd gone through, while others believe she had to build, as the sound of construction, in her mind, would keep the vengeful spirits at bay. During what was described at the time as the world's longest home renovation, it is worth noting that no architect was involved in the process, as Sarah made all those decisions herself. With no real plan for construction and 36 years of remodelling, you have closets opening to blank walls, doors that open to steep drops to the ground below, or even nothing at all. There are even staircases leading nowhere and balconies inside the house. There were rumours that the home was designed in such a way as to confuse the ghosts seeking to hurt her and her family. Others believe, though, that it was just down to many building mistakes. Stranger still is that no one truly knows the exact number of rooms that the house has, as every time a count is done, the number changes. Almost like the house is messing with people or changing things inside on its own. Roughly though, they think the property has 160 rooms, which includes 40 bedrooms, 2 ballrooms, 1 which is not completed, 47 fireplaces, over 10,000 panes of glass, 17 chimneys but with evidence of another 2 hidden, and much more. Sarah spared no expense, and it's estimated that she spent more than $5 million on construction. I'm not sure whether she had a serious interest in the supernatural, but the property would suggest it, not only because she built it under the advice of her deceased husband, but she also included a séance room on the property. It was said to be a place that she used to communicate with the spirits and tell them about the progress with the house that she's building for them. Strange again is the room had 1 entrance but 3 exits. Throughout the house you can also find the number 13 everywhere, which in superstition is said to be unlucky, and in numerology brings testing, suffering and death. Sarah had windows with 13 panes of glass. The greenhouse had 13 ceilings. Walls had 13 panels of wood. Almost all the staircases had 13 steps, and the home also had 13 bathrooms. This is an amazing property with so much history attached to it. Now let's explore the supernatural aspect that seems to bleed into the very fabric of the property. In this house, both visitors and employees alike have many a tale to tell of ghostly sightings, disembodied voices, creaking hallways, people having their shirts or skirts tugged at, and shadows that seem to watch you from the dark corners of the rooms. One of these ghosts is suspected of being a man named Clyde. He used to work for Sarah and is said to be quite irregular in his appearances, described as being dark-haired with a moustache. He is often seen pushing a wheelbarrow in the basement, as if he's still hard at work. He's also been seen trying to repair the fireplace in one of the ballrooms. Guests have even approached staff stating, "We really like the actor who was repairing the ballroom fireplace, wearing white overalls and a Victorian boater hat." Seemingly they thought he played the role well and looked authentic. Problem is that at the time, the house had no actors. Can you imagine believing you were being entertained when you were actually seeing a ghostly figure going about his chores, as he always did? Another experience of the paranormal nature was by a tour guide named Samantha. She was showing her guests one of the newly opened rooms titled the Daisy Room. Now, the interesting thing here is that this room had been locked up for about 100 years under the instruction of Sarah Winchester. When the 1906 earthquake hit, the house was damaged and she got trapped inside this particular room. It took the workers quite some time to get her free. After this horrible and frightening experience, she demanded it never be opened again. So, Samantha was explaining the history of the room and the objects contained within that had not been seen by anyone until its reopening. Well, maybe Sarah was annoyed that her instructions were dismissed, but Samantha described hearing a loud huffing noise behind her. She stepped out of the room to investigate, only to see a small silhouette of a woman gliding along the darkened hallway. Samantha became very curious and tried to follow the figure, but it had disappeared. Only the sound of heavy huffing could still be heard. I guess it must seem frustrating though, if you're still residing in a place that meant a lot to you and your orders were suddenly being dismissed. No one truly knows why Sarah felt so strongly about closing the room up for good. Maybe there was a darker purpose to it. Even animals are not safe from the ghostly attentions at Winchester House. A guard dog that patrols the home in the evening refuses to walk along one particular hallway. It is said to become very shy and cower away from something unseen to our eyes. Well, they do say that animals can pick up on a lot more than we can. In fact, many of the tour guides who work at the property avoid any of the corridors on the 3rd floor. Footsteps and unknown voices have been reported. Guests have also claimed to have inadvertently taken pictures around the house and caught shadowy figures in the images. Tim O'Day, the Winchester House Public Relations Coordinator, has also experienced this with photos he's taken. He said that there was one window which appeared to have a shadow or maybe something else in the view, but he claimed he didn't see anything like that before the picture was developed. One very recent report from 2019 explained how an architectural historian was meeting up with the house historian named John Burma on findings regarding the stained glass windows of the property. He had been wanting to track down where the beautiful work had been done. Then the strangest thing happened, declared Burma. The very next day, a perfectly preserved envelope was found addressed to Mrs. S.L. Winchester from Pacific American Decorative Company. This was the very company that the researcher had found to be the maker of the windows. Crazy to think that the letter had been hidden away behind a wall for 125 years. Coincidence? Now, towards the end of her life, Sarah struggled terribly with arthritis and could barely lift her foot a few inches above the ground. She died in her bedroom on September 5th, 1922. In her will, she left her possessions to her personal secretary and her niece. The niece took what she wanted from the house and then sold the rest off at auction. Sarah had so many items, some strange and unusual, that it took 6 trucks working 8 hours, 7 days a week for 6 weeks to empty the property. That's crazy. No mention though in the will was made about the house. Maybe Sarah felt the property was cursed with ghosts and wanted to keep the rest of her family away from the threat inside. Whatever the case, the house was sold at auction in 1923 and has been open for tours ever since. Have you visited the Winchester Mystery House and witnessed the mischievous ghosts? Maybe you've seen the doorknobs that rattle on their own or heard the floorboards creak even though the room was empty. Let us know in the comments below. If you found this video interesting, you may also enjoy our video on S.K. Pierce Mansion, linked here.